The secret fight nobody was supposed to know about. In 1996, I sat down with a retired boxing coach named Harold Morgan at a diner in South Los Angeles. He was 71. His hands trembled, not from old age, but from the weight of something he'd been carrying for a very long time. He lit a cigarette, stared at the table, and then said something that would consume the next decade of my life. I was there the night Bruce Lee brought Muhammad Ali to his knees. I saw it happen, and I never told a soul, because who would believe me? At first, I didn't believe him either. Bruce Lee had been dead since 1973. Muhammad Ali was the most protected athlete on the planet. The idea that the two had ever faced each other in a real fight sounded like the kind of legend martial arts fans invent to make their heroes seem superhuman. But Harold Morgan wasn't a martial arts fanatic. He was a boxing man through and through. He'd trained 2 world champions. He'd overseen more than 300 professional bouts. He had no reason to lie, and after 25 years of silence, he finally had a reason to talk. So I asked him the only question that mattered. Where? When? How? He took a long drag, blew the smoke toward the ceiling, and started talking. It was a Tuesday. I almost didn't go. Los Angeles, the Olympic Auditorium, November 9th, 1971. Harold remembered it was a Tuesday because he'd nearly skipped it. His wife had planned a pot roast dinner. He called her, told her something had come up at the gym, and didn't hear a warm word from her for 3 days afterward. He laughed telling me that, but the smile didn't last long. He'd been invited by Angelo Dundee, Ali's legendary trainer. They'd known each other for decades. 4 days before that Tuesday, Dundee had called him with a message that left no room for questions. Harold, keep Tuesday night free. Don't ask why. Be at the Olympic at 9. Come alone. Don't tell anyone. At the entrance, 2 enormous, stone-faced men stood guard. One of them frisked Harold before letting him through, like he was entering a government building. That's the moment he knew this was serious. Inside, silence and shadows. The Olympic Auditorium was already a legendary place, built for the 1925 Summer Olympics, home to thousands of boxing matches, wrestling events, and underground fights that never made the newspapers. Its concrete walls, high, dark ceilings, and permanent smell of sweat and leather gave it a kind of grim authority. That night, it was nearly empty. No vendors, no announcer, no spectators beyond the first 3 rows. Just a single boxing ring at the center, bathed in the glow of 4 overhead lights. Everything beyond that circle of light disappeared into darkness. In that darkness, 47 people sat scattered and silent. They had all received the same instructions: come alone, tell no one, leave your cameras at home. Anyone caught with a recording device would be removed on the spot. Harold described the mood to me plainly. It felt like a funeral before the body arrives. Big men, tough men, men who'd seen blood and broken bones their whole careers, and they were whispering like kids in church. Ali walks in. At around 9:15, a side door swung open. Ali stepped in, not the Ali the world knew, not the dancing, trash-talking showman that made television magic. This was a different man, calm, focused. He wore black training shorts, black shoes, and a white towel over his shoulders. No robe, no gloves, just his hands wrapped in simple white boxing bandages. He climbed through the ropes, stood in the center of the ring, and looked out at the 47 faces watching him from the dark. Harold said he stood there for about 10 seconds without saying a word. I'd watched this man fight for 15 years, and I had never seen that look. He wasn't performing. He looked like a man who'd committed to doing something he wasn't fully sure about. Then Ali spoke, quietly, without theatrics or rhymes, just words. "Gentlemen, thank you for coming.
What happens in this building tonight stays in this building. You were invited because you are respected men, men of combat who understand fighting. I don't need to explain what this is. A man has claimed his art is superior to boxing. I've agreed to let him prove it or fail." Ali paused. He looked toward a door on the far side of the auditorium. It was still closed. "Bring him in." 14 seconds. Harold counted them, every one of those 14 seconds of silence. He told me counting was the only thing keeping him from holding his breath until he blacked out. 47 people stared at a closed door. Ali stood motionless in the center of the ring, wrapped hands hanging at his sides. The overhead lights hummed. The concrete walls held the silence like a vault. Then, without a sound, no creak, no squeak, the door opened. It swung inward as if nudged by something barely heavier than air. And through it walked a man who made half the people in that room quietly rethink everything they thought they knew about what a human body could do. He was small, not just smaller than Ali, small in a way that seemed almost wrong for what was about to happen. I spent the next 3 years verifying Harold Morgan's account. I tracked down 11 of the people who had been in that auditorium on November 9, 1971. 8 agreed to talk, 3 refused. Of those 8, every single one told the same story, the same details, the same sequence of events, the same ending. People who hadn't spoken to each other in decades described that night as if they'd rehearsed it together. They hadn't rehearsed anything. They had simply witnessed the same impossible thing. Some took it to their graves. Some tried to tell people and were laughed at. A few quietly preserved their memories in diaries, letters, and tape recordings tucked away in boxes in garages and attics across Southern California. I found those records. I found those letters. And this is exactly what they saw.
The man who walked like water. He stood 5 feet 7 inches tall and weighed 62 kilograms. Plain black cotton trousers, a white sleeveless undershirt, no shoes. His bare feet touched the cold concrete floor without a sound. In the distant glow of the ring lights, you could see every muscle fiber in his forearms, his shoulders, his neck. But this wasn't a bodybuilder's physique. It was something altogether different. His body looked like a machine that had been stripped down to only its essential parts. Nothing wasted, nothing soft, nothing decorative, pure function. And somehow, that made it more unsettling than size ever could. He walked toward the ring without hurry, without hesitation, without once glancing at the people watching him from the dark. His eyes were fixed on the ring, on Ali, on nothing else. Harold Morgan put it this way: "I've spent my life around fighters, heavyweights, killers, men who could put you in a hospital with one clean punch, but I had never felt what I felt watching Bruce Lee cross that floor. It wasn't exactly fear, it was more like recognition, the feeling you get the first time you see a predator in the wild, not behind zoo glass, not on TV, in the wild, where it's real." A martial arts instructor from San Francisco named David Chen described something similar. "Bruce didn't move like a fighter. Fighters carry their power visibly. You can see the tension in their bodies. Bruce moved like water flowing downhill, completely natural, completely effortless, and completely unstoppable." Over the ropes. When Bruce reached the ring, he placed one hand on the top rope and jumped over it in a single, seamless motion. No climbing through the ropes the way boxers do. He simply went over them. The movement was so fast and fluid that 2 witnesses, interviewed separately and years apart, used the exact same word to describe it: superhuman. He landed softly in the center of the ring, 2 meters from Ali, and for the first time that night, the 2 men faced each other. The contrast was staggering.
Ali towered over him. His shoulders were nearly twice as broad. His fists, even wrapped only in training bandages, dwarfed Bruce's bare hands. Standing beside the heavyweight champion of the world, Bruce Lee looked like a teenager who had wandered into the wrong building by mistake. Most of the boxing experts in those first 3 rows thought exactly that. Harold Morgan told me honestly, "I felt sorry for him. I genuinely felt sorry for the man. I thought Ali was going to hurt him, that we were about to watch something ugly happen. I almost got up and walked out." He didn't walk out, and what he witnessed next, he said, made him glad for the rest of his life that he stayed. "I'm looking at where I'm going to hit you." Ali looked down at Bruce and smiled, but not his famous smile, not the broad, camera-ready grin the whole world recognized. This was smaller, private, the smile of a man who is genuinely, quietly curious. "You're smaller than I expected," Ali said. Bruce said nothing. He stood perfectly still, arms at his sides, bare feet shoulder-width apart, breathing slow and steady. His eyes were fixed on Ali's face, not on his eyes, but lower, on his chest. Ali noticed. "You're not even looking me in the face, little brother. What are you looking at?" Silence. Ali leaned in slightly. "I asked you a question." Bruce answered. His voice was calm, quiet, almost gentle, but every single person in that auditorium heard every word. "I'm looking at where I'm going to hit you." The room went completely still. Harold Morgan told me his cigarette had burned all the way down to his fingers. He hadn't noticed. Ali stared at him. The small smile faded, and something shifted behind the champion's eyes. Not fear, because Muhammad Ali did not do fear, but something he may not have ever encountered before in a fighting context. A hairline crack of genuine uncertainty. Ali took a step back. He rolled his neck. He bounced twice on his toes. The showman in him reassembled quickly, throwing up a wall of confidence around that tiny, unfamiliar doubt. "All right," he said, louder now so the whole audience could hear. "The little man says he knows where he's going to hit me. Well then, let him try." The rules. Ali turned toward man standing at the edge of the ring, Angelo Dundee, his trainer, his manager, the man who had stood in his corner through every major fight of his career. Dundee was a compact man in his 50s, sharp eyes, quiet authority. He had trained champions. He had watched men nearly die in the ring, but even he looked uneasy standing there that night. "Gentlemen," Dundee said, addressing both fighters, "the conditions are as follows. This is a controlled bout. Muhammad will stand with his guard down, hands at his sides. He will not block, he will not strike, and he will not move from his position. Mr. Lee is permitted to deliver a single blow to the body, one blow. After that, the contest is over, regardless of the outcome. Is that understood?" Muhammad nodded without hesitation. "Crystal clear, Angelo. Let the man strike." Dundee turned to Bruce. "Mr. Lee, do you understand and accept these conditions?" Bruce gave a single nod, small, precise, absolute. Colonel James Whitfield, a military combat instructor and one of the 47 witnesses, later described him as looking like a photograph. "It was unnatural," the colonel told me. "People move, they shift their weight, adjust their balance, breathe visibly. This man did none of it. He stood there as if he'd switched himself off, as if he weren't alive. And then you looked at his eyes and understood that he was more alive than anyone you had ever seen." Meanwhile, Ali's body was betraying him. His breathing had changed, not dramatically, not in a way a casual observer would catch, but every fighter in that room noticed it. He was breathing faster, not from physical exertion, but from anticipation. His body was bracing for a blow his mind couldn't locate. 15 years of professional fighting instinct were screaming at him that something was coming, but his eyes couldn't find the threat. Bruce Lee stood directly in front of him, 2 meters away, completely relaxed, completely open, and somehow, impossibly, invisible as a source of danger. That was the genius of it. What none of the boxers in the audience understood until it was far too late was this: Bruce Lee wasn't waiting because he was afraid. He wasn't hesitating because he was unsure. He was doing something far more calculated. He was letting time do his work for him. With every second that passed, Ali's body flooded with a little more adrenaline. With every second, his muscles tightened a little more. With every passing moment, the champion drifted further from the loose, fluid state that had made him the greatest defensive boxer of his era. Bruce Lee wasn't preparing to throw a punch. He was preparing Ali to receive one. 40 seconds, 45. Hit me. The words came out harder than Ali intended, louder. There was an edge in his voice that hadn't been there before, something that sounded almost like a command and almost like a plea. One moment, then another. Bruce Lee's right hand moved. No, that's not quite right. Harold Morgan corrected me on this point 3 times, and he was insistent about it. His hand didn't move. Moving is what normal people do. Moving is what boxers do. What Bruce Lee did was something different. One moment, his hand was at his side. The next moment, it was somewhere else. There was no interval, no arc from one point to another. It was simply here and then there, like a cut in a film where someone removed the middle frames. Colonel Whitfield described it differently, but reached the same conclusion. In 30 years of military service, I have seen men fire weapons. I've seen bullets leave barrels. I've trained soldiers in close combat where 1/10 of a second is the difference between life and death. What Bruce Lee's hand that night did was faster than anything I have ever witnessed from a human body. I do not say this lightly. I say it as someone who has spent his life studying the mechanics of violence. David Chin, the only witness who claimed to have actually seen the strike, put it plainly: I saw it, but only because I knew what to look for. I'd trained with Bruce for 2 years. I'd watched this technique in practice hundreds of times, and even knowing it was coming, even looking specifically for it, I barely caught it. A flicker, a shadow. The sound. Every single witness described the sound, and every single one described it the same way. It was not a thud, the heavy, muffled impact of a gloved fist against a punching bag. It wasn't a slap, the flat crack of an open hand against skin. It was something none of them had a word for.
I'm waiting for you to stop thinking. Angelo Dundee stepped back through the ropes and dropped down to the floor of the hall. His hands were shaking. Harold Morgan noticed. Angelo Dundee, he told me, the calmest man in boxing. His hands were shaking. Now there were only 2 men left in the ring. Ali spread his arms wide and let his bandaged hands hang at his sides. He planted his feet. He raised his chin. 211 pounds of the finest fighting muscle on earth, completely open, completely exposed. He tapped 2 fingers against his solar plexus. Right here, little brother. Give it your best shot. Show me what everyone's talking about, because from where I'm standing, I see a small man in a white shirt with no shoes. I've been hit by Sonny Liston. I've been hit by Joe Frazier. The hardest punchers God ever made have had their shot at me. So please, show me something I haven't felt before. Bruce didn't move. Not a muscle, not a flicker. He stood exactly where he was, 2 meters from the most dangerous man in professional sports, hands relaxed at his sides, bare feet flat on the floor, eyes still fixed on Ali's chest. 10 seconds passed, then 15, 20. The silence became suffocating. Harold Morgan said he could hear his own heartbeat. He could hear the man beside him breathing. He could hear the hum of the overhead lights. 25 seconds, 30. Someone in the 3rd row coughed. The sound cracked through the silence like a gunshot. Ali's smile was gone, completely gone. He stood there with his arms open and his body unprotected, waiting for a punch that didn't come, and slowly, visibly, experiencing something he had never encountered inside a ring. He was not in control.
He had set the terms. He had dictated the rules. He was bigger, stronger, and the reigning heavyweight champion of the world, and yet somehow a barefoot man in a white undershirt who hadn't moved in 30 seconds had taken control of the moment. And Ali knew it. That knowledge did something to him that no opponent's fist ever had. It got inside his head. "What are you waiting for?" Ali's voice had changed. The performance was gone. It was a genuine question from a man who genuinely didn't understand what was happening to him. Bruce answered without moving, without shifting his weight, without changing his breathing. "I'm waiting for you to stop thinking." Ali blinked. The blink. It was a small thing, barely visible, meaningless to anyone who didn't understand fighting. But Harold Morgan saw it. Angelo Dundee saw it. Every trained fighter in those first 3 rows saw it. In boxing, a blink is a tell. It's an involuntary signal, the brain processing something it didn't expect, the body admitting for a fraction of a second that it is uncertain. Muhammad Ali, who had stared down Sonny Liston without flinching, who had laughed and taunted and held eye contact with every dangerous heavyweight on the planet, that man had just been made to blink by someone who hadn't even moved yet. Harold Morgan leaned forward in his chair. "That's when I knew," he told me 25 years later, barely above a whisper. "That's when I knew it wasn't going to go the way any of us expected.